Hello and welcome to Edupedia World.
So as you may be able to see, if I decrease this, we are getting like, it's hard to say, but it's like the image is it's like getting some depth to it, especially in this area over here. It's getting a bit of depth, and that's basically what this normal map is doing. As you see right now, there's nothing. If I turn on the normal map, you get a bit of depth. If I turn on the bump map, you get even more depth. And this just helps to create some realism to the image. And in my opinion, that's pretty important when you're doing this kind of stuff. So I think that if we increase this bump value a bit, then right now we've got a quite alright image. As you can see from this angle, we've got a lot of bumpiness, and that's just, this looks like the paint strokes that would be on the picture. We can also go into the reflectance, maybe decrease the width a bit, like that, so it's not that reflective, because I don't think paintings reflect that much. From all these different angles, I think it looks quite alright. So I'd say this is now our final painting. Yeah, this is nice. So now time that we start setting up. I'm sorry. It's now time for us to set up our lights. So I will go up here to light, click and hold, and then I'll drag onto area light. Press T and scale this up a lot, like this. And then I will position this one light about over here. And that is because if we look at this background, since this is shot in my living room, I know that there are two windows. There are some windows over here to the left, some very large window panels, and then there are some windows behind me a little bit to the right. So that is why I am placing a light over here, and that's why I'm also going to be placing a light over here. I'm going to be moving it up a little bit, and I'm going to be moving it over here like this. Press R, rotate it, and I'll just be moving it into the position. Okay, so I think we've got the two light positions pretty nicely placed. If we do a render, then we'll see it's all lit right now. We need to change the intensities of the light, because they are way too much right now. We can also, when we do this, turn on the background, and that way we can much easier to see. It's much easier to see if the light intensity is the correct. So I'll take this light, and as you can see on this little small blue arrow, this is actually the light that's coming from these windows. So I'll click on the color, and then I will change it to a slightly yellow color. This just adds a little bit of warmth to the image. I'll go in here, and then I'll add an effect called ambient occlusion, and let's see what that does. Creates a small shadow behind the image. I can go into ambient occlusion and increase the contrast, and I can also increase where is it? The maximum ray length, like that. And that's just going to add a little bit more ambient occlusion. I can take this light that's coming from the left and add some shadows, because if we look at these paintings right here, these paintings, they're all casting shadows to the right, so they are all coming from these windows over here. Therefore we want to add a shadow. So with this light selected, let's call this large window, and we can call the other one rear window or something, I don't know. We want to change the large windows, which are over here. Let's go into shadow and then add a area shadow, and if we render, we will see this this effect happening here. This is our shadow. Let me just move out of the camera, hide this, and then just increase the size of this guy. Maybe I can even change the width. I can, like that. Now it's the actual size of the windows, and as you can see, that really smoothed out the shadows. I may want to make it just a little bit smaller. Oh, I'm using the wrong tool. May just want to make it a little bit smaller, like that, to get a little sharper shadow. And I think that right there looks absolutely phenomenal. Let's see how it looks with the wall, and in my opinion it looks very nice. We may want to go into this rear window and add here on the general, choose a light blue color or something that's going to make it maybe a tiny bit of green. No, that's too much. I'm looking at these colors over here. You can see there's actually a bit of green cast on the wall, and over here there's a little bit more red, a little bit more yellow, and over here it's a little bit green. So if I can replicate that in here, it's actually going to look a little bit nicer. And I think this looks awesome. I think this looks great. Let's just check it from a few angles. One thing that I'm noticing is that I want to go into this large window and change the shadow. So as you saw, I changed the shadow to area. That means I want to go into shadow and then decrease the density to something like 75. Render once again, and that just gives me a little bit lighter shadows that more precisely match these guys down here. There we go. This scene is now finished, and we're actually ready to start exporting this. Or not actually exporting, we are just moving it inside of After Effects. So as you can see, what we want to do is somehow remove this white background and have these shadows and this painting sit directly onto the wall. So in order to do that, we first need to set up something in the render settings. So Control B or click this button, and we are ready. So we want to set up the multipass, and the multipass basically enables us to export the shadows as one layer. I'll show you what I mean later, but we're able to like extract the shadows and have them on a black and white image. We're able to have an object buffer that basically cuts out this image, and it's pretty cool. So multipass and add shadow and add an object buffer, and that's about it. I'll actually remove ambient occlusion right now. And there we go, that's all we need. The object buffer, make sure it's set to 1. And for the object buffer to work, we want to go over to Cube, just to right click, Cinema 4D tags, compositing, object buffer, and enable object buffer 1. So as you can see, if I click right here, object buffer 1 matches object buffer group ID 1 in here. And this should be all we need. I'm just saving this and just hit yes right here. This should be all we need. So let's jump back into After Effects, where I will just create a new composition. So click this button and I'll make sure to make it just full HD, because 4K is a bit too much for my machine. If you have a crazy computer you can do it, but for me 4K is a bit too much. So I'll call it painting on wall. Make sure it's 30 frames per second and I'll just hit OK. So I'll take the footage that we've got and throw it in here. And as you can see right now, the footage is way too big. And look at the resolution right here. It's 3840 by 2160. That's exactly double of full HD. So I'll just set the scale to 50% and we're all set. So what I will do is take our painting on wall tutorial and just drag it onto the timeline. And that will take the stuff we have made in here, and then it will make it into a layer and just composite it right on top. And there you go, you can actually see all the things right here starting to work. So we want to set this to standard draft, and now we can start working with our multipass. So I will call this, I'll actually not call it anything. I'll just go into the Cinema 4D multipass, click on this little arrow right here, and then I'll set the multipass and I'll set it to shadow. I'll hit OK, and now you can see what we've got. This is the multipass that I'm talking about. This is basically a black and white image or a shadow on white image. Since we're using black shadow, it's going to be black and white, but if you had a blue shadow, then it would be blue on white, or all the different colors of the shadows. So as you can see, this is just the shadow on one layer and it's on a white background. That means if we want to composite this on top of the video, we can just change the mode to multiply, and there we go, it's now added on top. We can do one thing right here. I'll just hide the sound. I'll call this shadow, and then I'll do Control D, and duplicate it, and then I'll change the multipass to something like object buffer, hit OK, and then I'll call this, instead of shadow, I'll call this OB for object buffer. And here I'll change the blending mode back to normal, and as you'll see, this should give us a black and white image with a cutout of the painting. And there we go. This is black and white, and it's basically cutting out the image. We need one last copy of this, so I'll do one right here, and here we'll just disable the multipass, and this will give us a basic image. So I'll take this, call it image, and then I'll move it beneath the object buffer. So we've got our shadow, our image, and our object buffer. So the object buffer is meant to be used as a track matte. So I'll set this to Luma matte, and what we've got now is this image that has been cut out by this image. So it's using the black and white colors to cut this out, and then we are adding the shadow path, and that way we can get the painting to be added straight onto the wall. As you can see, if I go to full, we are already at full resolution. This has a bit of jagged edges, and that's because our object buffer is not set to a high enough resolution. So I'll set this to standard final, and this may crash the program, but it's going to yeah, as you see right now, it's crashing a bit, but in a few seconds it will start working again. And I don't know, but I think it's just overloading the program or something, because it works fine right now. I'll press N and trim the comp. I'll actually move one frame in. So as you can see, this is how it's going to go every time I move a frame. At this point, it's going to like crash the program. But what we can see is that our picture has been added onto the wall, and in my opinion this looks pretty photorealistic. If we want to, we can go in place and add a fast blur to the image, and maybe just add 1 pixel of blurriness to match it to like the rest, because it's not all completely sharp. And here we go. So this is how we could add the image. So this is now that the creative phase starts, and this is now that the creative phase starts, where you can start changing out the image. So if we go in here, this is what we would do if you know like which painting should I choose. You can go in here and hit this button. You can actually just select another image. So let's just try this guy, and we also want to go into the bump channel and change it to the other painting, and also the normal channel. And that's all we have to do in order to change this. So After Effects will update all on its own, and in a few seconds we will see the new painting on the wall. And there we go. This is how that painting would look. I don't like that painting very much, so I'll go in to the color channel and change it to maybe this painting instead. Go into the bump, change the bump, image, and I think we may want to do a few renders in here to get the you could start changing the lighting a bit, because this image has to be lit a little bit differently. So we may want to increase this light on the left. I think this looks better. So let's just let it render, and we will see the last picture. And then from this, your fictional client can choose what image they like. And if I was the client, I would definitely choose the first one. So let's just re-roll back to this. And that's about it. This is how you can, or this was how you can add like a CG painting to a wall And if you were to render this out, you would get a pretty nice video. I'm actually not going to render this out because it's going to take a million years, and that's one of the disadvantages with Cineware, is that the rendering takes ages, because it's like rendering 3 images, merging, doing all sorts of stuff, and it just takes a million years, but it's pretty nice when it works. So you can of course do this with a lot of other objects. So I used just a simple cube, but if you have a 3D model of, like, I don't know, a plane, you could add the plane to the scene as well. The limits are basically your imagination at this point. So yeah, but this was just a I can't call this quick, but this was a nice tutorial showing how you can add a painting to a wall.
Thank you for watching Edupedia World. Stay tuned for more videos.